Okay, good morning. Good to see everybody here. It's a beautiful day in Chicago. It's supposed to get nicer over the weekend, but you guys won't get much of it anyway because you'll be inside. As you know, I'm Jeff Paul, and in the back we have Jill Lynch, my very valuable person, and we have Rodney and Towson in the back there, and Dean. You guys might know them. When you guys, if any of you come over to the office later, you get to see Jill's real working environment and in our gigantic, luxurious office suites. What we're going to do here for the next 3 hours is talk about the whole issue of writing copy that sells and gets people to buy stuff. We're going to go for about an hour and a half. We'll take a few short minute break, and then we'll finish up. We'll try to be done by 11, so give you guys a chance to get a lunch break. And if anybody's coming over to the office, Jill, do you have the schedules for the office trips?
Yeah.
Those are being handed out?
Yeah, they've all got them.
Okay. Okay, good. And then we'll see you guys over at the office later for those of you that want to come over. Before we get started, I just want to real briefly ask everybody to be uncomfortable and just stand up and introduce yourself. We'll start in the back of the room. Just say your name and where you're from. And
I'm Larry Bast. I'm local. I'm here from Downers Grove.
okay, hi Larry. I know you in the back there.
Yeah, I'm Rick Osborne, and I'm as local as Larry. I'm from Lombard. I'm looking forward to all this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we're Jim and Shirley Rittenhouse, and we're from Kokomo, Indiana.
Thanks for coming. William, Bill.
I'm Bill Privatera. I'm from Austin, Texas.
Thanks for coming.
Who's that? Ken Kerr. I'm from San Diego, California.
How you doing, kid? Nice to meet you.
Gary Michaels, sunny Southern California.
I'm Rex Fisher. I'm from cold Kansas City.
I'm Warner Chen from New York, and I can't possibly wait to meet this gentleman. Wonderful. I read his book like crazy. His book is like a Bible of the business.
Thank you very much. Gordon?
I'm Gordon Richardson from Downers Grove.
Got two Downers Grovians here.
I'm John McMullen from Southport, North Carolina.
You're lucky. You get,
Hi, yeah, I'm Dave Caldwell from Algonquin, Illinois.
Dean Clark from Humboldt, Kansas, southeast Kansas.
I'm Tommy Lynn from Memphis, Tennessee. I was here last week.
Forrest Telestis, Chandler, Arizona.
Joe Polish from Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah, I'm Pat Hawley. Grew up in the area here in Arlington Heights, but I moved to Tempe, Arizona about 20 years ago for the nice weather involved.
just like everybody else from down there. It's like the southern suburbs of Chicago down there. Okay, I think we got everybody. Glad to see you all made it here. We got a wide variety of places, some Illinois here. So one thing we're going to talk about is the geographic things involved in writing copy as well, and we'll cover a lot of areas that hopefully when you leave here at the end of the session, that you'll have a much deeper understanding of what's involved in writing copy and how to make copy work for you to sell things that you want to sell or get leads or both. And there's a lot of things we want to cover as far as this issue of writing copy. Oh my gosh, there's Paul Hartunian on crutches. That's Paul Hartunian, everybody. Paul's going to be one of our guest speakers. He's a very excellent speaker with, looks like a broken leg, huh?
So I said, before O.J.'s found not guilty, I'll break my leg.
That's a perfect example of why you should never make promises. Geraldo was going to shave off his mustache, but I guess he didn't have to. Anyway, Paul will be guest speaking tomorrow. Everybody pay very close attention to what Paul teaches him. So we're going to talk about the issue of writing copy, and we'll cover a lot of areas. So I'm just going to kind of go through the outline. We've got a lot of examples, and if we have time at the end, which I'm hoping we will, we're going to try working on designing an ad as a group here together, just to give you an idea of how to put all the stuff pieces together. First thing we're going to talk about is setting the stage, and what I mean by setting the stage is this is from my point of view as far as the issue of writing copy. One of the things I've learned to be very, somebody's phone's beeping in there. Very honest, I think it's my phone. But, writing copy in getting people to do things. Now, one of the things I have to tell you as an overall starting point is that you pretty much have to not pay attention to anything that you've learned or that's conventional, and you've got to really change the way your mind works. One example I just want to give you that's real brief, and Paul mentioned here, was the recent OJ trial. I would imagine there's nobody here who didn't either see it live or on video or on the radio. And, you know, conventional wisdom would tell you, as Paul said, I mean, if you looked at the facts and the reasoning and the logic behind that whole case, and I don't care which side of the issue you're on or all that, that's not my point. My point is just simply that in that particular instance, you saw a perfect example of emotions completely overriding any logic or reason involved in the way the verdict went. And again, I'm not giving you this from a subjective opinion saying he should have been guilty or not guilty or whatever, because, I mean, my opinion is meaningless but on that regard. But my opinion isn't meaningless in the fact that if you really think about what happened there, the defense used very, very good emotional, what I would call direct response type of copy, and the prosecution used very professional, logical way of communicating with lots of reason and lots of scientific, analytical type of so-called copy, the way they spoke through the trial and in the closing arguments. If you compare Marcia Clark and Chris Darden's closing arguments to Johnny Cochran's, I think anybody here would concur that there wasn't even remote similarity to the way they were done. You know, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. You know, if you can't trust the messenger, you can't trust the message. Planting all kinds of psychological, very emotional seeds, which obviously worked pretty good because it only took them about 15 minutes, I guess. I think they were killing time just to make it sound like they'd been in the room longer. But obviously it worked. And the prosecution was very dismayed at the fact that their logic and their reason didn't provide a guilty verdict. I wasn't so dismayed. In fact, when I saw the closing arguments, taking my OJ breaks, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I take at least one OJ break a day. I have been, but now I'm not going to be able to until he does his next thing. But in any case, when I saw the closing arguments, there was no doubt in my mind whatsoever of how this thing was going to go. No doubt whatsoever. And people kept saying to me, everybody says he's guilty, you know, the jury was done so fast. I don't know. I'm just saying, to me, I'm going to guess he's not guilty just simply because of the way things were done. And I think you really think about that quite a lot because in the context of what we're talking about here, because quite frankly, people's emotions will override reason and logic every time, 100% of the time, usually. And a lot of people are stuck in a very, the first thing on 1A is eliminate the myths of conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom is usually meaningless, irrelevant, and wrong in almost all cases. And what you're supposed to be thinking or doing and what actually does end up working are usually far removed from each other. I had the privilege yesterday, I signed up for my second grade Alex. His teacher needed somebody to come in on Thursday for an hour to be a writing workshop helper. So I went for my first writing workshop yesterday, and these are 8-year-old kids, most of them second grade, and I had 2 of the kids, I helped them with their stories, and one of the stories was my dog, and then it went into how he had 3 dogs and they all died, and then he got this new dog who also was very sick and dying. And I was going through it. My job, as told by the teacher, was to correct the punctuation and the grammar. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God! And so I had to pull the teacher aside and say, look, I have to explain something to you because when I signed up for this, you know, I do write for a living, but I really didn't know exactly what I was getting into, but like I don't know anything about grammar or punctuation. I don't even know what a preposition is, so I don't know if I end the sentence with one or not because I don't even know what it is. And she goes, oh, I'm sure you'll do fine. I'm sure you'll do fine. So I sat down with the kids, and you know, it was very difficult to try to teach them what they were doing wrong. I mean, I could figure out where periods went pretty much and commas. That part I could get down. And I can't spell, but the words, at their level at least, most of the words I could figure out were wrong, like hour and more and stuff I could figure out. But it was very an awakening experience for me, realizing just how far away I am from the way I do stuff from what is conventional, what kids are taught in school. Because I'm sure I had to be very careful to not get into certain areas that I really wasn't sure of. Like my son Alex started a lot of his sentences with and. I mean, I start sentences with and all the time. And I guess you're not supposed to. So, you know, those are things you have to be aware of, that what you think and the conventional wisdom and the way we're all taught and using writing to communicate, to sell, are just vastly different worlds. So that's the first thing I want to try to get in everybody's mind today, to realize that if you're going to have success with copy, you're going to have success changing the way your mind works and wondering about whether things should be or shouldn't be a certain way. There's no rules. Everything can be any way you'd want. I won't show you guys, but Jill saw it yesterday. We got a direct mail package yesterday from Canada that was quite interesting. Rodney knows we get a lot of neat stuff coming in the mail. You hadn't seen this one yet. This package was unique, let's put it this way, very unique. And this person, whoever put it together, didn't pay any attention to any rules of anything. But I would bet you they do pretty well with the piece, just seeing how they put it together. But again, conventional wisdom and success have nothing to do with each other. Next thing, point 1B, is there's a huge difference between writing for communication of information or relaying a story, factual story, and getting someone to respond or buy something. And the reason I wanted to put this up front also is because some of you, and I've seen a lot of examples of people writing copy, and we see this all the time. People send us stuff all the time. We see copy every day from people. Most people have a very difficult time changing the way they write or what they're saying, if it's a visual, on video or on audio tape, whatever the medium is, getting a message across that isn't professional and boring. See, because most people are very, very caught up in the way, like my son is learning in second grade. That's the way he'll be taught for the rest of his career in school, as all of you probably were. Fortunately, I didn't graduate from college, so I got out of it before it was too late, maybe. But if any of you have the handicap of an advanced degree or anything, then you may have some real trouble, because you can't communicate when you're relaying a story to somebody about a series of events that this, that, and just a logical train of thought. It has nothing to do with anything that's making a communication. See, if you're not communicating, you're not going to get any copy that's going to work. And we see people all the time writing things that would be written the way you'd write something for a college thing. Or I have a sister-in-law who's a nurse, and she shows me some stuff that they give her, for like a course that she may want to take, and it's called the interdimensional occupational relationship between psychotherapy and the pervasive mindset of the something or other. That's the title of the course, and then you read the course description, and it's just that bad. And I just said, I can't believe anybody signs up for this stuff. And she goes, well, we have to sign up for some of these things. So I guess the writer, they're forced to do it because they need continuing education, but the writer certainly isn't communicating anything, even to my sister-in-law or the other nurses. And the language is so professional and so wonderfully professional that it doesn't communicate anything to anybody. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the morning here. But I do want to stress that it's a very, very important point. Again, this issue of for somebody to respond or to buy something, it's a lot different than just relaying information, because you're not just relaying information. You're getting them psychologically moved off of the couch, so to speak, and over to pick up the phone or to fill out something, whatever. You've got a lot of things you have to overcome. And if you just simply use an informational approach, it'll probably be unsatisfactory and a negative results. Last thing on item 1 is a definition of advertising. Now, if any of you have been familiar with Kennedy and Albert Lasker and that whole crowd back from the early 1900s, that's where this first came about. And there's a story that's probably fake, but that sounds good, about how this guy came into this bar and heard some guy talking about asking what the definition of advertising was, and if I could only find a man who could tell me the definition of advertising, whatever. So then the guy that went upstairs or gave him a message up in his room, and he opened the message and he finally found the definition of advertising. Again, I'm sure that whole story, the way it's presented, is all phony and fake, but the definition of advertising isn't that he said. Does anybody know what it is? And salesmanship in print is what he said the definition of advertising is. Now, in today's environment, you have to say salesmanship in whatever media you're using, whether it's electronic, TV, video, audio, whatever. But I think everybody really needs to think about that, because even people who are in the business or do well and people who know better still forget what the definition of advertising and marketing is. Salesmanship, I guess these days you would have to say salespersonship in order not to be politically incorrect. So salespersonship in print is what the definition of advertising is, or marketing. And you can never ever lose sight of the fact that every word, every paragraph, every line, every word, everything has to be leading towards a sale, or if it's lead generation, of course, to respond to the lead. But you only got a couple of choices. Either they respond for lead generation or they're ordering. That's it. The fact that they like you or think you're a nice guy or a woman or that your writing is good or you have a nice business, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. When you're selling, we used to have a guy in our office who he couldn't sell anybody anything, but when the customers would leave, this was in-person selling, and we would say, well, how'd you do? He'd say, well, did they buy anything? No. Okay, but they like me. Oh, that's good. So we haven't been able to figure out how you spend that yet. So you need to have a transaction has to occur. It has to go from not occurring to occurring. Or if it's lead generation, they have to go from not calling you to leave for their information. You are selling all the way through, from the first syllable, the first thing they see, everywhere, and you could lose them at any time by being boring or uninteresting or professional, and it's gone, over. And believe me, I still make this mistake. Everybody makes this mistake. You're never going to bat 1,000. But many times when something isn't going right, and it just doesn't seem like it shouldn't be going right because of a previous experience or testing that had worked, or something that I just thought it was the right thing to be doing or the way to do it, I go back and look at the copy, and sometimes we find that we can tweak it because we lost people right up at the stage where we should have not been losing them because we got too professional. So keep this in mind. It's salesmanship, salesmanship, salesmanship all the way through. And we'll talk about how you get to that point, but I just want to make sure we set the stage properly here so that everything we're talking about in that context of selling, 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 because that's what you're all here for and that's what we're all trying to do. A lot of people are worried about what their peers might think or what their spouses or family might think or friends might think, and again, all that is stuff you have to overcome yourself because the reality is none of that makes any difference. Number two, before you write,
I have a question.
yes.
You say huge differences relying on a story. Could we tell or writing not just one story, could be many stories? Because like example, that Tony Robbins and many people, that's a great, we sell later. Usually not only one story, could be many stories.
Yes, correct. We'll talk about stories in a few minutes as far as the stories that sell kind of stories. What the question was, can you have more than one story or multiple stories in your copy? Yes, and we often do. The kind of story I'm talking about here on 1B is relaying a story, which would be like what a reporter would say. A reporter would relay a story in the fashion of the building was burned to the ground when the firemen got there. It took them 3 hours to put out the fire, remaining whatever, and there was an injury. One fireman had smoke inhalation. I mean, that's how a story gets relayed. That's a lot different. We'll talk about stories that sell in a little bit. And yes, stories are very, very important. Very important. Number two, before you write, you must have a good product or service. Now, I know this sounds kind of stupid, but I just want to explain. We're going to talk about, as we go through this a little more. A lot of people, the definition of a good product or service, by the way, is not, I'm not referring to what's the conventional definition of a good product or service. I'm talking about one that people want to buy. Okay, now I'm hoping that everybody has the integrity that when your products are good, meaning that they do what they say they're going to do or they deliver on their promises or even more than they promised and all that. But the definition of good that I'm talking about here is one that people want to buy. A lot of times we see people all the time who have products or services that people just don't want to buy. And if they don't want to buy it, there isn't any copy in the world that can save it if nobody wants to buy it. We have some people that just keep going and going and going like the little bunny, and it just, sometimes even they run out of energy and they still keep going because they're determined that they've got the product that people are going to buy. Again, my definitions are a lot different than other people's because I have an understated and intrinsic ethical way that everything has to be what it is, no misleading, nothing exaggerated or undelivered promises. So with that foundation, though, you have to have a good product meaning that people want to buy it. So the reason I'm saying this up front is because when we get into all the details of writing copy and look at all the examples, again, nothing will help if your stuff is not interesting to the people that you want to sell it to, or it's not interesting at the price you want to sell it, or any number of other reasons why it may not work. So keep that in mind, very, very much keep that in mind. Also, B, you must have a plan for your effort. We're going to cover that in the boot camp part tomorrow. but I think it's very important to operate from some sort of a plan when you start your testing and working on your copy, because a lot of times if you just start winging it and just start doing things, your copy may end up the way, and believe me, the copy and the offer and all that stuff can make a huge difference. So where you end up at and really what you wanted your business to be like may be two different things. So it's very good to start from some sort of a plan of attack of how you're going to get business and what you're going to do one step or two step, or what prices you're going to try to offer and what costs and things you're going to have involved, so you can get an idea of whether your thing even has a chance of working from the starting place. So before you write, you really should have a product that people actually want, and secondly, you should have a plan to go over that. I won't spend any time on the plan part today because we'll go into it in pretty great detail tomorrow. So now let's talk about some unwavering rules of writing copy and some things that I've discovered I've been doing this for several years now. A lot of things that I'm going to be telling you here, just about everything, actually comes from experience. I'm not giving you any opinions on things today. I'm just giving you information that has been proven by results and by facts and empirical evidence. I'm real big on empirical evidence because, again, opinions are cheap. We all saw everybody's opinion on the OJ thing, how much that counted for. Opinions don't really count for much in direct response marketing and in this information marketing. Your opinions and everybody else's opinions are all basically meaningless. So the whole thing we're going to cover here is straight from what I consider to be empirical evidence and facts that we've discovered. The first rule, 3A, the market is first, foremost, and always. And this is another area where people have a lot of trouble. We see it all the time. People have a product or service that they've developed, and they think they understand who they're going to sell this to and what the market is, and it's not even anything close. We see this kind of a thing all the time. If you don't understand the market that you're going after, or you don't have somebody with you as a partner or associate or consultant in some capacity who understands the market very, very intimately, you're not going to have success in almost every case. People have an idea of usually almost everybody starts out with a product, and then they try to find somebody to sell it to. Okay, and that's when you write your copy, if your product is designed that way, usually your copy won't make much difference, again, because they're not going to be interested in buying it. I think the much more successful way to go is to pick a market or markets and then develop your product or service based on what that market is telling you that it wants, or you think that it wants, and then if you can't come up with it, move to another market. Everything I do, I have several different businesses going on. We always are looking at the market first and then seeing if the product will fit. Occasionally, and maybe by a rare circumstance, you can get lucky where you develop a product and then you put it into a market and it was right for the market. That might happen once out of 1,000 times. The other 999 times you're going to fail if you don't develop a deep understanding of the market first, product second. This is a very, very difficult thing. Most people make a lot of mistakes on this. I've done it myself, and I'll probably do it again, even though I know better, but you really have to focus in on this. That is something that's a very fundamental part of success, and again, your copy won't make any difference if your product or service isn't designed for that market, very intimately understood. Number B, never ask the copy to do more than it should be doing. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I got a letter in the mail yesterday. Well, I get lots of mail. And by the way, for writing copy, if you guys, you should get on every mailing list. Buy all the little books for $9.95 and $7.95, and get on every mailing list you can get on because you'll learn a lot about copy and what people are doing. I got one yesterday from a guy whose name I won't mention. Some of you might know him, and it was he's into a new thing now where he's jumping on the health bandwagon, and it seems like that's last year or so I've been seeing an incredible increase in the amount of mail I get for health-related newsletters and products and antioxidant vitamins and all these substances that are going to cure your body and all that. Well, anyway, this guy wrote this letter and talked about a family member of his who was cured by this amazing product, and then the letter. See, I usually skip around when I get the letters. I'm usually I just glance at things just to see, because a lot of people, and we'll talk about that, look at letters not the way you think they look at them. Anyway, I'm going through this thing quickly, so and then I read the whole thing. He was trying to offer two things with the letter. He was trying to offer to call his office to discuss something with him about this, and then he was also trying to get you to be in the business opportunity of selling this product that he was talking about in the letter. Now, I couldn't figure out what he was doing. I couldn't figure out why I should be calling him, and I couldn't figure out what he was really offering. He mixed two things into this piece. He mixed the business opportunity stuff, which was part of it, and then he mixed the using it for yourself or your family, buying this stuff, but there was no direct offer of the product in the pitch. There was no explanation of the business opportunity in any way, and then you're just supposed to call him. In my opinion, this piece will fail. Most likely, 99% chance this piece will fail. He tried to get the piece to do more than is expected to do. Now, let me give you another example on the other side, is that the lead generation, I'm sure most of you have seen examples of lead generation that we do for different companies, and Planning Profit Systems is the original one that you probably have all seen. When we do lead generation, we're not trying to do anything else except get the person to pick up the phone and call and leave a message on that recorded message line. We don't mix up anything else with that. When they get the sales letter, we offer one direct offer in the sales letter, and we don't, if we have other offers or things, subsequent sales or other things, we don't mix that in the sales letter. I'm not interested at that point in getting them to think about other things. I'm only interested in making that first sale. So whatever you do not ever, a lot of people will try to lead generate and sell in the same piece. Or they'll try to, the sales letter will try to sell whatever it is they're selling, and then maybe something else. And like this example I gave you, this guy where I got this thing in direct mail that wasn't lead generated, where the letter was so mixed up as far as what he was talking about, I didn't know what he was actually talking about. Now, I'm reading these things from a different perspective, because I'm reading them from a scientific, analytical point of view of what other people are doing. A typical prospect isn't going to take that kind of time. If they can't figure out what the hell is going on, it's over. Okay, so, he got me to read it because of my professional interest in it. I'm sure 99% of the people getting this letter plus aren't even getting a quarter of the way through it before it's gone. We'll talk about people read letters in a minute, but if you don't get that succinct focus on what you're trying to do with that particular effort, you're going to have a lot of trouble. And Paul's going to talk tomorrow about with public relations. Most when people use press releases, they try to mix several attempts into one thing, and Paul will talk to you about that, why that doesn't work there either. Number C, the offer must be what they want, not what they need. This is another area where people have a lot of trouble, and I can't stress to you enough that if you try to write copy to people's needs, you will end up most likely broke. You can't sell things in general to people based on need. It has to be on what they want. There's some basic staples in life, like people, people who own razor blade companies probably can continue to sell razor blades without a lot of good direct response copy because, most men and women have some shaving needs, and there's only 5 billion people on the planet. Most of them shave something or other, so, you don't necessarily have to be a good copywriter to sell razor blades. If you're selling something a little different or not, that's not a basic, need of human life, which most of us here, I don't imagine too many of you are selling food or other things like that are basic, then you better start thinking about what they want, not what they need. I can't tell you how many things that I've had that have failed that were because I thought people needed it, and things we see all the time where everybody needs this. We hear this all the time. Everybody needs this. Why isn't this working? Well, the reason it ain't working is because nobody needs much of anything except some basic staples in life. Actually, all we need really is some molecules of oxygen and certain proteins and things to keep your blood going. Beyond that, everything else is really a want. So change your thinking to want and get rid of the word need. Fill a need and that sort of thing is a terrible way to think about things. Fill a want and you'll be okay, but fill a need is always going to be trouble. In your copy, we get to some examples. You'll see that we're trying to always focus in on what people want.
Want means a more emotional level. Need is like a logical level.
Well, a need, the question was, is a need more logical and is a want more emotional? Usually, yes, because, for example, I drove over here in my Land Cruiser. I really don't need a Land Cruiser. I could be driving a different vehicle that could have got me here. I wanted it because the winters here can be bad and I wanted a four-wheel drive, but I didn't necessarily need to have that particular vehicle. You guys didn't necessarily need to come here this weekend. You wanted to come here this weekend. I bet you all of you could have lived and survived, physically speaking, without being here this weekend. But you wanted to come here. So again, wants are what people, the That's basically driving every emotion, all progress man has made, or good or bad progress. Everything that's happened has happened because of people wanting to do things. People didn't need to expand society or take over other geographic areas or civilizations. They wanted to. So everything that happens is because people want to do things. And there's a huge difference between needing and wanting. D, prospects have to justify their decision to buy after making the purchase from an emotional basis. Now this is very similar to what happened in the OJ thing. I'll go back to that just because it's so fresh in everybody's mind. But did anybody see the jurors on TV the last couple days? One juror said that she first voted for guilty, and then she was convinced that by the others to go for acquittal. One juror said that she knew he was innocent from the beginning, and the whole court case was a wasted exercise. Another one said that the verdict was clear because the prosecution didn't bring up anything that would have taken them to a reasonable conclusion that he did it. And now they're all rationalizing. Every juror is now logically rationalizing their emotional decision they made back last Monday. Okay, they're rationally explaining to themselves and to others the justification of what they did from an emotional basis. Okay, because people will always make a decision based on emotion and then justify it logically. Now I'll hear a lot people say, well, that might be true, whatever, but in my industry that's not true, because I sell things to chemical or computer engineers or whatever, and that those people won't buy things. I mean, they're analytical and they're going to buy things based on specs and statistical data and that sort of thing, and that is not true either. A lot of pharmaceutical companies sell to physicians. Not so much these days, but I used to know a couple of women that were pharmaceutical salesmen, people. And in the old days, they would, and I know I'm not saying this because I agree with this, I'm just telling you what they did. They would usually hire very attractive women to go out to see doctors when they were mostly men to sell these pharmaceutical supplies and medicines. Now, is that right or wrong? That's not the issue of what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that the doctors would prescribe these medicines because they had this very attractive woman coming in every month to say hello and dropping off samples. Again, right or wrong isn't the issue. The issue is that these doctors who are supposed to be analytical scientists are recommending a certain drug to all their patients because Leslie's really cute. Now, we could all disagree with that all we want, but that is the reality of how those things were done. Now, these days, you don't see that as much in the much better politically correct society that we live in. But the reality is that's what happens. Now, the doctor would say, when recommending these prescriptions, well, this is really a good medicine or whatever, and they'll rationalize and justify this to themselves in their head. But the real reason they did it was because they want to see Leslie every month coming into the office. Same thing is true of, this goes on with doctors. They give them trips and things, they fly them down to the Turks and Caicos Islands for a weekend, that sort of thing. Now, does that have anything to do with the quality of the medicine? Probably not, but yet they'll recommend and prescribe the medicine because they just got back from Aruba. So these are emotional decisions that then end up being justified logically, and that's how everybody does things. So if you start out appealing to their logic up front, you're going to miss the real reason why they're doing stuff. Next, you must get their attention, interest, desire, and action. This is the formula AIDA. This formula was first arrived at in 1906 by a professor of psychology when he was analyzing advertising. He wrote a book in 1906 called How to Make Advertising Work or something like that. And he was the first one to come up with these 4 articulated steps of attention, interest, desire, and action. We're going to talk more about that as we go through the examples. But at this stage, number 1, you've got to get their attention. If you don't get their attention, you have no chance of making anything work. If you don't get their attention, you must get their attention. Okay, and this is something that people, again, miss when they're marketing or copywriting. We'll talk about headlines in a little bit. Interest. Once you've got their attention, you've got to grab and hold their interest instantaneously. You're going to hear Dan talk about infomercials tomorrow, so I won't talk about that. But everything you do, you have to realize that if you bore them for one sentence, you have the chance of clicking them off. You've got to hold their interest. Then that interest has to lead to a desire. You have to move them through the interested in what you're talking about phase of your copy into the desire to have whatever it is you're offering phase. Okay? And that desire has to be triggered emotionally. That's where the emotional trigger has to really kick in, because if you don't, you're not going to get them to do the last thing, which is the part we like, is the action part. We all like that action part. And that's the part where they either send the check in or call you up or whatever it is you're trying to get them to do. Or if it's lead generation, to request the free information. But attention, interest, desire, action. Now we're going to talk a little bit later about Dan Kennedy's version of that formula, which is maybe a simpler way to think about it, but it ends up being exactly the same. That formula will never, ever fail you. Any copy you write will never fail you. If you're lost and you don't know where you're going with your copy, come right back to AIDA, and then you'll see if you're lost, maybe it's because you varied from this formula. F. There must be a complete message to market match made through the empathy of the target's mindset, wants, and desires. What I mean by that is, we were talking about that this morning before you guys got in here. If you're off just a little on the message that you're communicating, if it's just a little off, you might as well be off by a million miles, because it doesn't matter. You have to be exactly on the psychology of your prospect. One of the fascinating things about writing copy to me is, and I'm sure Paul gets the same kick out of it, when you write something and then people see it or read it or hear it and they act upon it, I still get a kick out of that. I mean, I like the money part of it too, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure you'll agree that knowing you were able to think through your prospects so completely and so deeply that you were exactly with that prospect. They say in courtrooms now, if it don't fit, you must acquit. Okay, and I'm saying in copywriting, if it don't fit, they ain't going to buy nothing. I know that doesn't rhyme, but that's basically what we're talking about. Okay, and I don't mean you have to be sort of close to your prospect's mindset. Writing copy is all psychology. It's all human behavior. It has nothing to do with what you're selling. It has nothing to do with anything. A good copywriter could write copy about any topic or any subject with just a brief understanding or introduction. I take an occasional consulting project, and when I do, if I'm not entirely familiar with the target market, I have a very simple set of questions I ask the person I'm working with to make sure I understand. Tell me about your prospect, and identify your prospect. And we'll talk about that in a minute too, but I want to see this person. I want to see Elizabeth sitting there in front of me, or John, and I want to see him as a person. And I want to understand everything that they think about and feel completely. If you don't get that market to message match, you're not going to get them to do what you want, at least in big enough numbers to make things work. So does that make sense? Because this whole thing is psychology and human behavior. If you want to become the best copywriter in the world, read and study things that are only involved with how people think, psychology, human behavior, and ignore other things that are business related, and you'll be a very, very wealthy business person. And if you look at anything, that's an area that you really need to focus in on, is this human behavior and the psychology of your prospect's mindset. Because empathy, the word I put in there, empathy, that's a quality that most people don't get in their marketing, whatever they're doing. Empathy is defined basically as an understanding or a sympathy with your prospect or your target or your customer. And most people don't really get the empathy across because you want them to feel so deeply. So you can't explain empathy in your marketing. You can't say, I empathize with you, and then get them to like that and believe that and move into your mental state. You have to demonstrate empathy through your copy. It has to seem immediately to them as if this person, whoever wrote this, whatever this is writing directly to me. This person knows me and understands me and what I'm all about. And every person in this room is a little bit different, and all of you might be, from all different walks of life and all different parts of the country, yet you're all here because you have a similar mindset of wanting to be or in the business of direct marketing in one phase or another, specifically down to the information marketing business. So when we write to you guys, or we know exactly what we're doing. If I was writing to another target market that I didn't understand, I think I'm a pretty good copywriter, I would not be able to succeed. So that's a very, very important point. G, you must tell the whole story. This is an area where I had the question asked already this morning was, we talked at the beginning, is my copy too long maybe? We hear this over and over. There's no such thing as copy that's too long. We'll go into some details, like I said, a little bit later as we move through this morning. You must tell the whole story. If you tell 97% of the story, you're not going to succeed. You've got to tell everything.